Good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Maseches Bava Basra Daf Pei. Pretty clean and simple. Two sugyas that are very similar to one another, and then we'll call it a day at the bottom of Pei Amud Beis. The Gemara on the bottom line of Pei Daled Amud Beis starts out with the following: Rav Shmuel da'amrei tarvaihu. Rav and Shmuel agree with each other in the following case. Top of Pei Amud Aleph. Kelev shel Adam kona lo b'chol makom chutz me'rishus harabim. If I'm trying to buy something and I have a kli, so anything that goes into that kli will create a kinyan for me, unless I'm in a rishus harabim. That doesn't work because the rishus harabim is no man's land or every man's land. Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Tamer Tarva, the rishus harabim. They argued and said, once it's your kli, it's your kli. Now we could easily conceptualize this. If I have a basket and I'm walking through the marketplace and I drop something into my basket, kinyan. We can understand that. It's actually more mechudash what Rav and Shmuel say, that your basket does not create a kinyan in Rishus Harabim. And then here what the Gemara says is, don't worry. There's actually no machlokas between them at all. Amar Papalo Pligi kan b'Rishus Harabim kan b'Simta. One is talking about where they're in a Rishus Harabim proper. There, that's like the din of Rav and Shmuel, that your kona lo b'chol makom, your kalim will always be kona for you unless you're in a Rishus Harabim proper. But kan b'Simta, but where the din of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish was quoted, where they say afilu b'Rishus Harabim, they're talking about an asimta, which is a place which has some degree of usage, because it's not like a perfect Rishus Harabim. It's also not a Rishus Hayachid. It's kind of a little bit in the middle. As of now, no machlokas between them. They're talking about different cases. The restrictive sheet of Rav and Shmuel was talking about a Rishus Harabim proper, and Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish were talking about a simta. Asks the Gemara, okay, if there is no machlokas, then v'amai karula Rishus Harabim. Why then did you refer to it as a Rishus Harabim? Says the Gemara, she'en Rishus Hayachid. It's just not a Rishus Hayachid. And hachanami mistabra. This is very logical. 6 lines down on Pei Amud Aleph. When you have a place where you're allowed to put your stuff down, you have the right to put your stuff down there and leave it there, then no problem. Yesh lo rishus in, ein lo rishus lo, shma mino. So here we see that this distinction that we just made, that between Rishus Harabim and Simta, that everyone agrees, everyone. If it's a Rishus Harabim proper, you have no Rishus to put your stuff down there, so therefore your Kalim cannot be Kona there. And if it is a Simta, that's Rishus Harabim proper, but if it's a Simta where you are allowed to put your stuff down, so then that is where we say that the Kinyan does work, no machlokes. Says the Gemara, I'm not so sure that's true. Tashma, we have a Brisa that seems to challenge this idea. Just to let you know what's coming, up until the last line of this page is Brisa. We won't know the question until we get to the very bottom of the page. So let's learn this Brisa. Arba midos b'mochrin, there are 4 different approaches to mechira. Ad shaloni smala mida lemocher. Before the container is filled up, it still belongs to the seller. Mishin ismala mida lelokeach. When the basket of apples that I purchased is full, so then that goes to the lokech. When is it true that we make this distinction, that when the basket is not yet full, it still belongs to the seller? But once it is full, it's as though it transferred over to the lokech. That's b'mida she'ena shel shneim. That's when the measuring cup doesn't belong to either of them. It's a hefker measuring cup. It belongs to the building, whatever the case may be. But if the measuring cup taka did belong to one person, Rishon kana, then whatever goes into the basket, if I'm scooping into my basket, it's mine right away. When is that true, that you're kana Rishon? When is that? That's true. If I have my measuring cup and I'm in Rishus Harabim and Chaser Shel Shnehem, so that shows me that I'm able to make a kinyan. Aval Birshus Mocher, but if I'm in the home of the seller, I'm in his yard, Lo kan ad sheyagbihena o ad sheyotziena merishuso. Then in that case, if I'm in your property but with my cup, so then no, that doesn't work. The putting the stuff into my property with my cup doesn't help. I need to do agba or transfer rishuyos. Birshus lokeach, if we're in the property of the buyer, since the mocher already went into my property to sell it to me, so therefore that kinyan works, and therefore it's mine. But birshus hala hamufkadin etzlo, what if they're in a third party's yard, not owned by the lokech or the mocher? Lo kana achi yakabel love. There will be no kinyan until the mocher is makabel on behalf of the lokeach, or ad sheyiskores makoman, or until the lokeach rents out that property. Now, we learned a long brisa. Where's the kasha on what we saw earlier? So the Gemara says 2 lines from the bottom, Ktani Mia, what did we see in this brisa on the earlier side of things? We saw that if I am using my container to scoop into my container, I'm using my measuring cup into my container, we had said that that's true only Birshus Harabim. What does that imply? Turning to the top of Pehem at Beis, my la Birshus Harabim Mamish. Doesn't that show us that this is a Rishus Harabim Mamish? And still we see that there's a kinyan. That's against our understanding of the Gemara earlier. We said earlier at the top of the page, on the top of Pehem at Aleph, that there's no machlokas between Rab and Shmuel on the one side and Rav Yochanan and Rav Shimon ben Lakish. We had said that Rab and Shmuel gave off this position that Kalev Shaladam are Kona Lebechol Malkum Chutz Rishus Harabim. And then we said Rav Yochanan and Rish Lakish said no, even in Rishus Harabim. What did we say? There's no machlokas. One's talking about Rishus Harabim proper, the other's talking about a simta, but there's no machlokas. But this brisa doesn't seem to say that. This brisa seems to imply on the top line of Pehem Beis my lab Rishus Harabim Mamish. And look at the Rashbam here, a very articulate and beautiful Rashbam, one that we would never see if Rashi was authoring. Look at what the Rashbam says. This is almost ki'ilu, and I'm not minimizing because it's so clear. It's like reading the art scroll in English almost. Look what he says. My lab Rishus Harabim Mamish. Ve'afilu hachi ktani dim haisa mida shel echad min rishon kana. Alma kelev shelokach b'rishus rabim kana v'kasha lamad amar chutz mirishus harabim. This is a problem because we said at the top of Pehem at Aleph that there's no distinction between the two. They agree. Rishus harabim proper is off limits, and in a simta there you can make a kinyan like that. We see over here the Rishus harabim proper is a place where you can make a kinyan. Stira. The Gemara says no, it's a simta. This Rishus Harabim is talking about a symptom. Whoa, hold on one second. You can't say that because the Gemara says, when you look back at that brisa, the brisa had said, Rishus Harabim uvechaser she'ena shel shneim. That means, and the Gemara asks this on the end of the top line of Pehem at Aleph, v'adum yudechaser she'ena shel shneim. The Rishus Harabim that we're talking about has to be similar to a chater that nobody owns. And that means Rishus Harabim. That's not a symptom. Says the Gemara, no, that's not correct. What did it mean when it said my chatzar she'ena shel shneim nami? What did the brisa mean when it said that line of chatzar she'ena shel shneim? So says the Gemara, delo dehai kula, below dehai kula, ela detarvayu. No, it's a place where everyone has access. But really, you can't ask a kasha on our first nakuda that we learned that everyone agrees that in Rishus Harabim no kinyan can be made in sim. You cannot learn that from there because perhaps that brisa was only talking about a simta. So now the Gemara asks our second question of the day, our final question of the day, and we will go until 3 lines from the bottom, 4 lines from the bottom of the page, and then we'll stop. Let's see what the question is. We're 4 lines from the top of Pehem. Aleph ba'aminei Rav Sheshes Merav Huna, Kelev shelokeach b'rishus mocher, kana lokeach olo. If my kelim as the buyer are in your field as the mocher, so I have a basket and I go to your yard to go strawberry picking, and I drop strawberries into my basket with intent to own. Says the Gemara, Kana lokeach olo. I'm in your property. I'm the buyer. I'm the one who came on your property to go strawberry picking. When I put the strawberries in my basket, do I own them? So it says the Gemara, answer number 1. We're going to have 5 answers. We'll learn 3 tonight and 2 tomorrow. Says the Gemara, Amar le tani tuha. We learned this already. This is the Gemara Maseches Gittin, also quoted in other places, Bava Metzia, Kedushin, and Avodah Zarah. This is a regular case of Gittin. Zarkula l'soch cheka l'soch kalsa, areza megurashes. If a man throws his wife a get into her lap or into her kalsa, which is a basket, halacha l'maisa, they're megureshes. Where does she live? In his house. So she has a basket. It's kelev shalokech birshus mocher. So the Gemara says, beautiful. We have a raya brura that a woman who doesn't own her house, she lives in the house with her husband, but she doesn't own the house. But she has a basket. If he tosses the get into the basket, they're divorced. Says the Gemara, this is like one of the most validating things ever, because I say this as a parent, like, haven't I asked you to clean your room 1,000 times? Look at this line. Amalei Rav Nachman, my taima pashat talei mehahi. Why did you quote that source? That I have hit you over the head with 100 times. You know that brisa is not a good mari makom for your for this proof. What were we trying to prove? The kalim of a lokech b'rshus mocher. Oh, so we brought this case of gittin. Says the Gemara, no. The basket was hanging on her. He says the basket was tied to her. It's not a regular case of lokech b'rshus mocher. It's not regular. Third answer. She's sitting on the ground, and the basket's sitting between her legs. So therefore, Pashat, that's not the same thing as lokech b'rshus mocher. Or fourth answer, the guy sells baskets for a living. There's baskets everywhere. It's going to land in a basket. Okay, so Pashat, she's going to have access to more baskets. Or the fifth rejection of answer number one is Rav Yochanan Amar Makom Cheka Kanuila Makom Kalsa Kanuila. Rav Yochanan had a broader kula that a woman in general, her chest, any way in which it lands on her, a basket, it's always kanuila. And Amar Rava my time Rav Nachman, lo al makom cheka v'lo al makom kalsa. A husband's not makbid even though she's living in his house. So we tried to give an answer to the question. We had asked, what about Caleb Shalokech versus Mocher? Would there be a kinyan? We tried to bring from Gittin. The Gemara says there's 10 reasons why you can't bring from Gittin. It's tied to her body, it's hanging on her body, all the kulas the Gemara says. So therefore you cannot learn from them. Ella says the Gemara, let's give one more answer for tonight and then we'll stop. Ella pshot la meha. Let's answer up this question from another space. What is this other space? This other space is what we learned already earlier today in the Brisa. Birshus mocher, if the lokech is birshus mocher, lo kana ad sheyag bihena o ad sheyotzena mirshuso. So this is almost a black on white example. We have a case scenario where the lokech is birshus mocher, and we say that there's no kinyan at all in my basket until I make a separate, unrelated kinyan of hagva, or if I do a shinui rishus. My la bekelev de lokeach, which was in the rishus of the mocher, and therefore we have an answer to our question. Says the Gemara, lo, that's not what's going on in that brisa. The case of rishus mocher was lo bekelev de mocher. I was in your rishus buying something, but I wasn't using my kli. I was using your kli. I think about this sometimes when you're in Jewel. When you go to Jewel and you're the one who brings the bags to Jewel because their bags are horrible. So you bring your own bags that don't tear. That's the bag of the lokeach, birshus mocher. Masha'ein kain, if you're taking a Jewel bag, that's a kli mocher, birshus mocher. It's not the same case. So here the Gemara says, we presented a brisa on the bottom of Pehei Amud Aleph where we said that the lokeach is birshus mocher, and we said no kinyan until there's hagbah. Says the Gemara, maybe that's bekela of the mocher. Maybe it's bekela of the lokech. Says the Gemara, no, it's not. It's bekela of the mocher. Says the Gemara, okay, well let's play this out. Umi the reisha bekela of the mocher. If the case and the brisa on the bottom of Pehei Amud Aleph was talking about birshus mocher and kelev de mocher, if the reisha is talking about kelev de mocher, seifa nami bekelev de mocher, then the seifa, the latter cases in that brisa on the bottom of Pehei Amud Aleph should also be talking about kelev de mocher. But ema seifa, I don't understand. Birshus lokeach, kevan shekibel alav mocher kana lokeach. So we said in our brisa a line that doesn't make sense if we say that it's the kelim of the mocher. What did we say in the brisa? That if the mocher is in the rishus of the lokeach, kevan shekibel alav mocher, once the mocher agrees to the terms and conditions of the sale, kana lokeach. The e bekela of the mocher, but if the reisha is mocher, then the seifa is mocher. And if here in the seifa, the guy is using the kelim of the mocher, amai kana lokeach. Why? That doesn't make sense. Because we're using the kelim of the mocher, and that's not the kelim of the lokeach. So says the Gemara, seifa asan the kelim of the lokeach. You're right. In that case, we are actually talking about the kelim of the lokeach. So says the Gemara, my paska, what are you saying? That every time we have to broaden this question because in my paska is not really clear. And the Mefarshim here explain this as well. That if the Gemara is asking, is it true that if we're in the rishus of the mocher, we're going to use the kelim of the mocher? And if we're in the rishus of the lokech, we're going to use the kelim of the lokech? Is that in fact true? Says the Gemara, yes, that's exactly true. People don't always travel with their own jewel bags. And therefore the Gemara says, as stama de milsa, here's a good general rule. Bei mocher, mane de mocher shchichi. If what we're talking about is that the sale is taking place in the property of the mocher, so then mane de mocher shchichi, then you're more likely to use the kelim that are found inside the property of the mocher. And bei lokeach, but if the sale is taking place in the home of the buyer, then mane de lokeach shchichi. And therefore, we don't yet have an answer to our question, so a little bit of a cliffhanger for today. We'll just review our question, which was, If I have the kalim of the lokeach, I have my kalim, I'm the buyer and I'm in your property. If I'm buying something in your property and I'm putting it into my kli while it's in your property, well, the kli itself belongs to me, but the larger property belongs to you. Which one do we look at? The ownership of the kli, which is the lokeach, or the ownership of the property, which is the mocher. We'll stop right here. We'll pick up with the third answer tomorrow night. 4 lines from the bottom on Pei Hamid Beis. Wishing you all a beautiful night.